Hey skiers, I'm Jeff from SkiEssentials.com. Welcome to our 2026 ski test. Today we're talking about this Blizzard Thunderbird R15 82. I had an absolute blast getting on this thing this season. I've always really enjoyed the Thunderbird 76 or Thunderbird R15 76. So putting this in a little bit of a wider format, or putting that in a little bit of a wider format, I should say, is just fantastic for me. I personally have always leaned a little bit more towards the slightly wider carving skis. I've always loved the carving ski build, but in something that's around 80 underfoot. Just makes it less likely that you're going to boot out. Just like a little bit more fun to ski later in the day when the conditions get variable. Not going to get bogged down as much, but still narrow enough that it retains really good torsional stiffness too. And there's basically two of these. Sorry, it's kind of falling over here. But there's basically two of these for 2026. So there's this ski that we have here, and then there's the same exact name, but you tack on LTD at the end. And people might be wondering, like, what's the difference? Why is there two? And I think that's a great question, because the performance between them is very, very similar, having skied them back to back. This ski essentially is built the same way, but has a different binding, this TPX 12 binding, and a little bit of a different plate. So the different binding, the Comp 12 on the LTD skis, it does stiffen up kind of like right here, the underfoot section of the ski. But aside from that, they're quite similar. And to be perfectly honest, I actually think I like this one more. I can't quite put my finger on why. I just felt like it had a slightly bigger sweet spot. And I think this is a pretty good example, if you're choosing between the two, is I'm pretty lightweight and I don't have a race background. I love to ski as well as I can in kind of a carving race-inspired format, but I mean, all things considered, I was not really a ski racer unless you go back to 8th grade. I don't think that counts. So I really like that. I just feel like I can bend it a tiny bit more right in the underfoot section of the ski and make like a slightly rounder apex of the turn. So it's just, I think it's worth considering. If you're choosing between the two, if you're built like me and you have a background like me, why not save a little money and stay here? If you're bigger or have a race background, and if you're a combination of those two things, then, if you don't mind spending a little more, then the LTD might be better for you. So anyways, really cool ski here. It's built just like the Thunderbird always has been. So true blend pieced wood core, 2 sheets of metal. It is a pretty stiff ski, but there is I wish I had an LTD. I should have kept an LTD up here, because it is just like a tiny bit softer, and I mostly feel it right there, like right where you're pushing against the toe piece of the binding, or right underfoot. But overall, it's still a pretty stiff, pretty strong ski. They still get the carbon, or the active armor, the carbon active armor in here too. So this kind of extension of the binding platform. So, you could say that the LTD has a better binding system, but this is still like a really impressive integrated binding system with a lot of technology. So there's nothing to scoff at here. And then the shape is like hugely important to these skis. 15-meter turn radius. This is the 170, so this actually has a 14-meter turn radius, but they're all essentially right around 15. 15 is I think it's the 176 that has the 15-meter turn radius, and that's kind of the reference ski. Having that shorter turn radius makes them so much fun, because they are stiff, they are torsionally stiff. This is a strong, high-performance ski. Take a strong, high-performance ski and put it in this shape, and it starts to become a lot more manageable. It's not, I can't go out quite as far as saying that, like, this is great for an intermediate, and Blizzard has other skis like the new Stormbird skis, that are going to be a little bit more appropriate for an intermediate. This is still pretty approachable, so if you're like a high-level intermediate or a low-level advanced skier, nothing wrong with picking up this ski and using it as something to grow into, to build your carving performance. But then, you take an expert skier, somebody like myself, who the older I get, the more I appreciate just a really, really nice frontside carving ski. It turns the boring days into really, really fun days, so to speak. Expert skiers like me will just absolutely love it. And like I said, I was going through some feedback, and I couldn't help but just keep landing on my own feedback. And I haven't shied away from expressing my fondness for the Thunderbird R15 over the past few years, that narrower 76 ski. I think this is my new favorite Thunderbird, and I think that says a lot. So yeah, really good ski. The LTD is awesome too. You just get the slightly increased binding performance or slightly increased performance overall, but fantastic skis. Really, really excited that Blizzard took that Thunderbird, the success of that Thunderbird, and kind of expanded into more of a full collection here. So that's it. That's the Thunderbird R15 82. Let us know if you have any questions about it, and we will see you out there on the slopes.